Welcome to my TED Talk. Today we will be talking about Ted Bundy and one of his survived victims. First, I'm going to talk about Ted Bundy's childhood. He was born in Burlington, Vermont on November 24th, 1946. Bundy's grandfather pretended to adopt him, and while he was growing up, he thought that his mother was his sister. There was suspicion of his grandfather having a violent temper and a fondness towards pornography, but Bundy never clarified this. But family members always had a distrust feeling about him. Bundy eventually found out the truth about his mother by finding his birth certificate and didn't take it well. There is a lot of inconsistent information referring to Ted's childhood due to the discrepancies being said from his family and himself. Since there was talk about his grandfather having some sort of addiction to pornography, Bundy was introduced to it at a very young age, which could have had an effect on his violent obsession with porn and his gruesome killings.
I grew up in a wonderful home with two dedicated and loving parents, one of five brothers and sisters. A home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives, where we regularly attended church, two Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home.
When growing up, he kept on getting more and more addicted to pornography, to the point where nothing was satisfying his addiction and it needed to become a reality.
And it happened in stages, gradually. It doesn't necessarily, not to me at least, happen overnight. My experience with, I'd say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with the sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it. Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
He didn't care about people, he had psychopathic tendencies, he lied, manipulated people, he had a lack of remorse and empathy, he had what we call now antisocial personality disorder. Once Bundy grew up, he went to college and graduated with a degree in psychology and went to the University of Utah. This is where he fell off the wagon and started murdering girls around the end of 1973. This is where I will be telling the story of Rhonda Stapley. About a year into his newfound liking into killing young girls, he found his next victim, Rhonda, a 21-year-old pharmacy student at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. Here's a quick clip of an interview with her.
It was October 11th, 1974. I was a student at the university in Salt Lake City. I was waiting for a city bus, and this Volkswagen drove by with a handsome young man in it. He stopped and asked me if I'd like a ride, and I accepted and got in. The intention was that he would give me a ride back up to the university. Instead, he very shortly took a detour, and when I questioned him about that, he reassured me by saying that he had an errand to run and asked me very politely if that would be all right and if I minded. I didn't mind. He told me he was a first-year law student, and he was handsome, and I was young and in college, and it felt safe. Nothing, that didn't seem like there was any reason to be worried. It ended up that he drove me up a canyon and pulled into a picnic area. My thought was that he was intending to try to make out, and I wasn't really a make-out girl. My my mind was trying to figure out ways to get out of this situation gracefully and without embarrassing or insulting either of us. He pulled into the like isolated picnic area and turned the car off. Then he turned in his seat so it was kind of facing me and leaned in really close. I thought he was going to kiss me. Instead, he said, "Do you know what? I'm going to kill you." And he started choking me. My first thoughts was that he had some really strange sense of humor. That was just for a very brief moment because he was squeezing so tightly that it couldn't be a joke. And my thinking that it was funny was all of a sudden very scary. He choked me until I was unconscious. Then I was moved out of the car onto a picnic table where the assault continued. I was beaten, and he dragged me to the end of the table and raped me. He enjoyed choking me until I was unconscious and then letting me revive and repeating that over and over. It seemed like he enjoyed watching me die.
Now, after I watched that video, I decided to get in touch with her through an email that was linked. I didn't actually think she'd respond, but she did. Here's what she had to say. I did send an email back asking more about her PTSD, but she never got a chance to respond. But I just think that it's crazy how somebody could keep that a secret for 37 years and then she was just storing it in her unconscious mind, not wanting to think about it, and right when something triggered it, when the man yelled at her, it just came all flooding back into a tragic form of PTSD. Even though I didn't get to talk to her myself about her PTSD, the therapy that she did and the journaling that she did to help get her through it and to understand the thoughts that were going through her mind. And it did help her because she got all her thoughts down, organized it, knew how she felt from her PTSD, and created a book. Thank you for watching my Ted Bundy talk. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll probably not see you next time.